Hello, everyone. My name is Spencer Walsh. Welcome to today's show. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We got a good one for you, as always. Let's take a look at what is on the docket for us today. We are taking a look at a pretty dramatic House hearing today with regards to Hunter Biden and especially with the tough grilling that Attorney General Merrick Garland faced today. We will give you the latest updates on what exactly is going on with that Hunter Biden inquiry and how it will play politically and how it will play legally. The two oftentimes very, very separate political and legal realities for politicians really on both sides of the aisle. We continue today as well with our government shutdown watch as McCarthy is apparently inching closer to a deal on that budget that we talked about on Monday. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, who paved the way for a Roe repeal, is facing abortion blowback from the right, and you're going to want to stay tuned for this last story, which is a really, really big deal. Biden kind of just did a little bit under the radar, a kind of halfway through, halfway there, half-see, or more like 25% of the Green New Deal. Like, he just did that. It kind of under the radar, but I think it is a very, very significant story. We're going to talk and break that down in detail as we go on throughout the show today. So thank you so much for joining us. We get right into it. All right, so we start today with this House hearing, and that is with Attorney General Merrick Garland. This is here in the New York Times, offering a pretty fiery defense of the Justice Department's investigation of Hunter Biden, saying he was not Congress's prosecutor. I'm not your prosecutor here, he says. I'm trying to find the truth. It was a pretty grueling hearing, apparently, before the House Judiciary Committee, that is the Jim Jordan Committee. So he obviously had to take his time to grandstand. So this is how it sounded.
Hunter Biden, everyone knows the fix is in. 4.5 years. 4.5 years the Department of Justice has been investigating Mr. Biden, an investigation run by David Weiss. Now we get a special counsel. And who does the Attorney General pick? David Weiss. The fix is in.
Extreme MAGA Republicans have poisoned our vital oversight work. They've ignored our legitimate oversight responsibilities and used their power to stage one political stunt after another. They have wasted countless taxpayer dollars on baseless investigations into President Biden and his family, desperate to find evidence for an absurd impeachment and desperate to distract from the mounting legal peril facing Donald Trump.
So that's a little bit of a back and forth there between Jerry Nadler, the top Democrat, and then the first clip there that you heard was Jim Jordan, the top Republican. So pretty much, he was kind of called in. Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, was by Jim Jordan, who obviously controls this House Oversight Committee, trying to provide oversight to, I guess the correct kind of phrasing of the verb would be, to the Attorney General, to the Justice Department, to make sure that this investigation is being carried out in the utmost levels of political respect. So here's the breakdown here from the Times. House Republicans view Garland as a linchpin as they seek to bolster an impeachment inquiry into President Biden that is thus far grounded in inconclusive evidence that he profited from business dealings of his son Hunter. So kind of going through this stuff, I think the biggest, there's kind of really kind of loosely connected but kind of tangential things that are around Hunter Biden at this point. We have the business situation where there's multiple times where the allegations are, it depends on, which way you spin it. The Democrats will say, oh, he just, he was out for himself. He was trying to be a good businessman. I don't even know if they can say that, but it's just like, oh, he was using his dad's, he was using his dad's name, but everyone does that. And he didn't have as good a connection to his dad as he thought he did. It's, there's no evidence that shows that, his dad picked up the phone. Although, there actually is some evidence that, his dad picked up the phone, but there's no evidence that we really know that his dad profited from, the things, the kickback, or got a kickback from the favorable relationships that Hunter had with these Chinese companies, these Ukrainian companies, all that kind of stuff. So many of the claims and insinuations they leveled against Garland that he is part of a coordinated Democratic effort to shield the Bidens and persecute Trump were not supported by fact. And much of the specific evidence presented, particularly as the testimony of an investigator who questioned key decisions in the Hunter Biden investigation, was given without context or acknowledgement of contradictory information. So Garland is a former federal appellate judge known for his circumspect and soft-spoken demeanor, took a more aggressive approach than during past hearings, alarmed by relentless attacks against his department. Countering their claims, he denounced escalating threats against Trump supporters that Trump supporters have directed against prosecutors, including Special Prosecutor Jack Smith and FBI agents, prompting significant increases in security. So this refers to some of the other investigations that he's had here. And so if you look at that is kind of a separate issue. You can already see that, so always important, even on these articles that I read, I pick the articles because I think they're relatively good kind of statements of fact, or actually that's not always true, but, with the New York Times, you can see the way the framing is here. If you're looking at this as some sort of, any normal person with any sort of semblance of media literacy, it's like, I don't know if I necessarily like the way that this is going here. I think this may be a little bit kind of, they're trying to sweep it on the rug just by the words that they're using. Like, you can tell where they're coming from almost by what they are saying. So with that, with that kind of being said here, let's get a little bit of a clip from Mr. Garland himself.
Justice without fear or favor. Our job is not to do what is politically convenient. Our job is not to take orders from the president, from Congress, or from anyone else about who or what to criminally investigate. As the president himself has said, and I reaffirm today, I am not the president's lawyer. I will add, I am not Congress's prosecutor. The Justice Department works for the American people. Our job is to pursue justice without fear or favor.
Yeah, so you can see definitely some feisty remarks coming from Garland there, and he, it's essentially it's going to be pretty clear. I think it is definitely something, if you're a Republican out there, you're going to really want to hype this up and going to just raise it to the level, the highest level that it can be, and it's going to be kind of understandably so. But I think when it does come down to it, I think the jury is honestly still out in terms of, can they draw, at least in the mainstream media circles, or not, sorry, they're obviously going to do it in the right-wing media circles, but can they, the right-wing, just general blob media apparatus, whatever you want to call it, can these people get enough just general buy-in on what they have to say, on what they're thinking, and just point to something that clearly bad that Hunter Biden did, some sort of, smoking link about, this, through my connection with my father, this is from Hunter Biden's perspective here, I helped this Chinese company do this, and as payment, they gave me some money, they gave me my payment, and then of course, and this is actually, direct quote from this election, or from this investigation that's been kind of bandied about on right-wing media, ask your conservative uncle if they know what this means, a little 10% for the big guy, which I forget, I don't know the exact context, but that was something that came out in some sort of documents about Hunter Biden being like, oh, we got to give 10% up to the big guy. If that kind of arrangement was happening, it could be a much bigger deal. But can they prove that? Can they draw a clear link that, kind of makes its way out of right-wing media circles and become sort of a popular, something that's popularly acknowledged? Well, I do not know. But I think it will be a very, perhaps one of, if things seem to look as close as they are, it could be a very actually decisive factor in the election. All right, we will move on today to our next story, and that is with regard to we'll talk a little bit of government shutdown watch here, and we will do that in a second. All right, so we talked about this a little bit on the last show, and that is to do with the big looming government shutdown that we have coming up. And Congress apparently might be moving an inch closer to funding the government after another round of negotiations between the House GOP's warring factions. Big emphasis here on might. So we've been seeing the big drama. If you listen to Monday's show, you would know. If not, go back, press play, listen, and see, kind of catch up as to what's going on here. But obviously, we're having the budget, and we coming up on the government shutdown, September 30th, 11:59, I guess is the deadline there. And it's kind of shaken out in a way that's very, very similar to the debt ceiling. The Republicans have tried to get out of the House this CR, this continuing resolution stopgap measure, with some pretty deep cuts to all things, other than essentially immigration or the military. And that has not gone far enough, apparently, for a small few, which is enough because of the very small kind of majority that the Republicans have in the House at the moment. That has gone through, enough, has pissed off enough people, the Matt Gaetzes of the world. Victoria Spartz was another part, like the House Tea Party people, the people who want as little government spending as possible, that, it apparently has not been strong enough for them when it comes to actually, when it comes to cutting enough stuff, when it comes to being as harsh on, welfare programs. And I don't even know, aid for Ukraine, I think, was another sticking point for these people, that they did not want any aid to Ukraine. So, so that I think they failed to pass the kind of prelude to that vote, which was incredible embarrassment. So McCarthy was like, okay, we're going back to the drawing board. We got to find out a way to get these kind of far right Tea Party Republicans back on board, so we can kind of do it, kind of party line proposal vote to force Joe Biden and the Senate to kind of do something to fund some sort of realistic kind of situation here. And, negotiations will have to come fast with the Democrats getting involved in the near future. But McCarthy says he thinks we made tremendous progress. Republicans outlined a new plan to keep the government open for a month at the spending levels outlined in their party line debt ceiling bill from earlier this year that was ignored by the Senate. The package, which includes a border security proposal and fiscal commission to address spending, which would be enough to win over at least some members in the far right of the party, who has consistently demanded spending to be capped at fiscal year 2022 levels. So it seems to be at least some of the members will be won over on this. But again, this is where the margins come in. It can be very, very thin. I think it's like 5 or 6, depending on attendance, in terms of people that they can actually afford to lose when it comes to just when it comes to the whole outlook of getting just a simple bill without any any Democratic support throughout the House. But so separately, members agreed to limit a full year appropriations to $1.52 trillion, lower than the figure outlined in the final debt ceiling deal between Biden and McCarthy, which the Senate appropriators have stuck to. There's nothing more flexible in Washington than a red line, said Representative Dusty Johnson. There's a real movement happening in that room. The agreement also ensures the defense appropriations bill that failed earlier this week will get another floor vote after 5 members tanked it on Tuesday, sparking a furious outcry among much of the party. We got a plan to move forward, going to the DOD, and then going to a number of those appropriations bills. McCarthy said he and the Republicans were very close on a temporary spending bill to keep the government open as budget negotiations continue. I feel like we've got a little more to go there. We've seen this maneuver before, much as he did during the debt ceiling saga. McCarthy appears to be letting conservatives pack their policy wish list into a bill destined to be rejected into the Senate. We saw that very, very clearly, where Biden was able to actually roll back a lot of that stuff. Honestly, way more than I thought. I don't know about way more. There was still pretty significant stuff that he gave up, like that student debt moratorium for one, was a pretty big deal. And that, like, if he's able to kind of hold the line as well or even better, it'll be a win for him. But he is going to have to, Kevin McCarthy is going to have to get that bill up to the Senate to be ignored first to almost kind of start the process. And give himself some sort of starting process first. And again, what I just don't know is I just don't know where the Democrats are on this. Like, they got to be one side in this negotiation as well. I think the Republicans are probably doing a pretty smart strategy by getting their demands, their wishes out there, because it helps to start from, if you're the Republicans, it's pretty good to start from your starting point, and again, just kind of eventually have to, whittle things down. The chances are there's going to be more emphasis on the Democrats to kind of come in and make concessions, and in terms of obviously who's going to get the blame for the shutdown, the kind of pass the pass the can around, hot potato situation. It's not going to be looking good for the Democrats if McCarthy comes in and it's like, oh, we have this deal. It's not going to be a very popular deal with the American people, but at least it will be a deal. And if they're not able to in any way, I honestly haven't seen anything really from Democrats much about this deal. And if they're not able to speak up about it, I think it will be a really big problem. So moderate Republicans may be willing to swallow the vote, meaning this vote to kind of send a hard right budget out to the American people or out to the Senate and kind of start negotiations. But much as they did during the debt ceiling showdown, purely for the sake of forward progress. But the low spending numbers are already triggering some complaints from members representing Biden-won areas. I think really just the areas around New York City here is a big area, such as George Santos. You can't force me to vote for $1.471 trillion when it's a rounding error to $1.526 trillion, and you give me and all 11 New Yorkers double the work to have to go defend and spin, Santos told Semaphore. So saying like, it's such a small kind of difference, this gap between are we capping appropriations at the same way as they were during the 2022 fiscal year, or to keep them on pace, or maybe just slow down the pace that we give them each, over this kind of 10-year period or whatever. That such a small disparity is going to have such big cuts for the programs that matter, and something that's not going to be something that Santos and his New York friends are going to really want to spin at all. So McCarthy may be further from a GOP-only deal than he's letting on. Matt Gaetz, the speaker's personal bête noire, reportedly stood up during Wednesday's meeting and claimed that at least 7 members won't vote for any continuing resolution, more than enough to take a party line bill. Any continuing resolution. Tim Burchett of Tennessee, who was the one who, if you remember during the speaker fight, had that viral video of him yelling at Matt Gaetz to come in and change his vote. He backed Gaetz's claim later in the evening. It may not help matters that Trump is now demanding that Republicans use the September 30th budget deadline to defund these political prosecutions against me and other patriots. So there's apparently going to be some sort of effort on that to make it political around that. But I don't know how you are going to cut the Justice Department budget, cut the FBI budget. I don't know. That hasn't really seemed to be kind of discussed, been something that's on the table as of late. But they failed on the debt limit. They must not fail now. Use the power of the purse and defend the country, the former president and GOP presidential frontrunner posted on Truth Social Wednesday. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see and track how that goes down. And really, again, Republicans seem to be kind of back and forth on this. Their party kind of ideologically, this kind of two sides of extremists and moderates, and then you got the kind of the broader middle. The moderates seem to have way less power so far than the extremists, who are really holding things down and taking a lot of stuff for this kind of just party line bill to get passed out and kind of get ignored in the Senate to kind of start off the negotiations. But I would really like to see, and I think it's absolutely essential that Democrats need to get their side rolling too, and at least have something for the Republicans when push comes to shove to say, okay, this is where we think, this is our vision, because I don't know, they do have the presidency and the Senate, so maybe good to get that process started as well. Just a thought before we're not, forced into making awful concessions just before 2024. How about that? Anyway, we will move on to our next story, and it is about Mr. Donald Trump, and it's going to be a very, very interesting one for his political future, and that is an issue regarding abortion. We will get into it in just a quick second. Okay, so we are going to Donald Trump, and it really kind of is a very interesting situation. Let's get into this from the Washington Post here. Former President Trump is facing sharp blowback from some anti-abortion activists and conservative governors, including his top challenger in the Republican presidential primary, reflecting the intra-party divisions over an issue the GOP struggled to navigate since Roe v. Wade was overturned last summer. And honestly, this is kind of where the GOP should be thanking their lucky stars that Donald Trump is in the position that he is, because if he was even a little bit politically less strong and secure, then some attacks like this, which are completely out of step with the broad swath of the country, not essentially completely out of step with anyone who isn't kind of a hard right, ideologically committed, not even Republican primary voter, but Christian Republican primary voter. It's a very, very small sect, but incredibly organized, incredibly influential sect of the country. If those attacks from those people that are so out of step with anybody except for that, again, key chunk of the Republican base, if they had been going on if he was, maybe at, 50 instead of 60 percent in the polls, it would have been maybe a little bit more of a consternation and maybe a little bit more of a headache. But these attacks starting now probably won't help that much or hurt that much Trump. He's got a really much better than anyone else, essentially, in the Republican Party, that's for sure. He's got a much better sense of what abortion is to people, how they're going to vote on it, what they think about it, how they feel about it. And with that, Republicans, and that's why I kind of keep coming back to this weird idea, this weird feeling that Trump may be, in no small part because of that position on abortion, which is essentially, we should stop here after Roe v. Wade. We've gone far enough. We've done what we need to do. We need to kind of just move on now, because he knows that's the most popular position with, just let the states decide. That's the, furthest right position that will still maintain any semblance of kind of broad-based political support. But when it, beyond that, they should be very, very thankful that he's going to be in the position to survive those attacks. And, they're stupid for making these attacks, but, it probably won't matter to him that much. And he is going to really be easily kind of carried across the line here, even if these attacks start coming up. So the tension centered on Trump's recent comments disparaging abortion bans after 6 weeks of pregnancy and pledging to work with both sides on a federal ban, though abortion rights activists staunchly opposed such a resolution. So essentially, pledging to work with Democrats on a federal abortion ban is essentially like saying you're not going to do any abortion ban whatsoever. And I think most people know that, especially the hard right people. Like, you're gonna work with the demon baby killing Democrats on anything related to abortion. Like, that's sacrilegious for them. Among those rebuking Trump are Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who is running a distant second behind Trump in many polls. And again, if he was running not so distant second, then Republicans would be in real trouble because they'd have someone with this toxic message, leading their party into the election against Joe Biden, and they would be in a better position. DeSantis would be a better candidate for Biden to go up against, and his stance on abortion, his position on abortion, and the ability to make abortion such a big issue that Biden will have if DeSantis were to win the nomination, that's going to be way, way better than anything Trump can give him about democracy and all that. The real thing about this person is a crazy loon on abortion is a big, big deal. So the former president turned to Iowa on Wednesday, the first GOP nominating state, and one where abortion is a potent issue for many. This is where probably one of the only few places where his stance here on this could hurt him. And he did during remarks in Dubuque, smartly, I think, tout his overturning of Roe. And last year, I was able to do something that nobody thought was possible, Trump said. And you really have to think about this, study this, because it's very important. We ended Roe. I did something that for 52 years, people talked, they spent vast amounts of money in fighting it, but they couldn't get the job done. I mean, it's good framing here as he was the one who kind of talked, he being the one who talked his way, he was the one who did it all. He was the one who actually did the thing that so many people were talking about. But, he would not have been able to do that without the insane amount of money being spent, all the groundwork being laid. That is the reality of the situation, but it still doesn't change the fact that saying, I was the one who delivered on all the talk of the conservatives and actually got Roe v. Wade done. So I know better than anyone when to stop. And that's now. Meanwhile, you got people who weren't just happen to be holding the bag or happen to be sitting in the Oval Office when the conservatives finally got a 6-3 majority. But they are, those are the ones who want me to go further. They don't get it. So he also warned against Republicans taking positions such as banning abortion, even in the case of rape or incest, or health of the mother. Without exceptions, it is very difficult to win elections, he said. We'd probably lose the majorities in 2024 without exceptions and perhaps the presidency itself. He is probably right on that, which is, again, why Trump is the most electable on the Democratic side. Because I think maybe Haley, or sorry, on the Republican side, but maybe Haley has a little bit more of a kind of moderate position on it. But I other than that, all down the line echoing things like Ron DeSantis. His comments left a lot of folks in the life movement confused because he did such a great job on doing Roe v. Wade. Roger Savino, a vice president at the Conservative Heritage Foundation, who led the Federal Health Department's Civil Rights Office during the Trump administration. Trump has dodged attempts to pin him down on his views about abortion bans and at the point which one should kick in. It could be a state or it could be federal. I frankly don't care, he said in an interview broadcast Sunday on NBC's Meet the Press. He especially angered some anti-abortion advocates when he called the 6-week ban DeSantis enacted in Florida a terrible thing and a terrible mistake, and said Republicans speak very inarticulately about the subject. Like, this is exactly right. Like, it's an absolutely crazy thing. And for, if looking at it, you could look at it for two, look for the Democratic side and the Republican side. So it's like, if you're a Democrat right now, you got to be hoping that like somehow these conservative Christians get angry enough and mad enough to get him to bend a little bit on abortion and say something crazy like, I was wrong, we need to go further on well, he's never going to say I was wrong, but saying we need some sort of national abortion ban, and they really push him to the right, drag him to Ron DeSantis, Kim Reynolds territory on this stuff. But I don't think they will. But again, if you're a Republican, you got to be like, please, Donald Trump, just keep doing what you're doing. Ignore these people. Just keep saying what you're saying about this, and hope that Kim Reynolds and Ron DeSantis become really where they seem to be headed to, which is the dustbin of history here. And it really, really is quite remarkable to see one person with such a good politically smart view on this, and he's the one that honestly happens to be, no surprise, many points ahead in the polls. So yeah, going to be very, very interesting to see how they are able to play this out. But if I'm a Republican, which by the way, I'm hoping that Trump starts sounding more like DeSantis on this. I don't think he will, but if I were a Republican, I would be pushing with all my might Donald Trump to the finish line, because on this issue, which is probably going to be one of the more defining issues in the election, he gets it better, way miles better than any other Republican. All right. Now to our last story, a really, really cool story here. One, I always like to end on some good news. The White House said on Wednesday that it would be unveiling a new climate jobs training program that it could put 20,000 people to work in its first year on projects like restoring land, improving communities, resilience to natural disasters, and deploying clean energy. All incredibly important things that could be, I love to say it, actually, the start of a real kind of green climate industrial industry about, making this transition a reality. 20,000 people to work in the first year, which is, it's not, obviously enough. The idea of things like the Green New Deal is that you're doing this on a massive scale, a World War II level kind of industrialization. But it is a big, big start, and it would not have happened, by the way. It absolutely would not have happened if there had not been a serious step up and a serious push from people. And it's important to emphasize that this wasn't just because Biden decided to be a real great guy and do this for the young people because he wanted to be nice to them. No, it was because young people and people were just generally concerned about this, green activists, and even I saw AOC taking a victory lap over this today. This is, to a certain extent, what you get when you have people like that in there making noise and having a sizable left flank of the Democratic Party. Like, there are no doubt they're on the left flank of the Democratic Party. They're not going to be some sort of outsider or kind of revolutionary force. But when it comes to this, you can actually get some stuff like this passed, even if, just by, I think, being there, making noise, and just kind of causing trouble. It's not, transformative by any stretch. It's what should be done, especially the scale of it. but it is a very, very big deal and a big step in the right direction. So, because look, the idea of a climate corps began with progressive environmental activist groups, including the youth-led Sunrise Movement, and essentially was the big selling point, the big idea, the whole big idea behind the Green Deal, which is essentially just do a kind of just transition between coal and kind of fossil fuel industries and production like that into a massive just federal hiring program and just creating an industry on a huge scale that would be equipped to create not only green energy, but transition us off of our current, fossil fuel energy system to a system that would be sustainable for the long term. And to see that idea, essentially be, watered down a ton, but be put in place is a big step in the right direction, because with that being put in place, it could be only grown and expanded from there. Which is a really big deal. So again, Varshini Prakash, the head of the Sunrise Movement, probably feeling pretty good about herself today after getting this done, and after having faced a fair bit of criticism for being disorganized, from not really having any major victories to do. But credit to them, they will keep pushing, I am sure. Especially with the idea of the Willow Project being passed. There's going to be more pushing on that front, but it really is incredible to see that when you actually are there, when you're taking up space, when you're making noise, when you're not going away, just making it easier for Biden and the White House to forget, they can actually do something pretty incredible. All right, with that being said, we are back on Friday. It's Newsflash.